everybody. This is Kristin from Teaching Balance, and I am here with you with this week's mindfulness meditation practice. And we are in the month exploring the cultivation of self-awareness, which of course is what we're doing when we embark on the practice of mindfulness and mindfulness meditation. It really is all about being in tune with what's going on in our minds. It's all about being metacognitive and aware so that we can really just take control. I mean, if someone were to ask me to summarize what is mindfulness really about, I often would find myself saying it's about getting back into the driver's seat of your mind. I really do feel that way. At least that's been my experience. And what's so rewarding about being in the driver's seat of your mind is that you notice if you have found yourself kind of going down a road of perhaps rumination or worry or, some other kind of spiral, if you will. And that awareness of it happening is is the first step in allowing us to stop and intervene in some way. So when we talk about these interventions, when we're talking about, what's going on in our minds, I think one of the things that's really helpful to talk about or explore is when we have a greater sense of how we are perceiving the locus of control in life when it comes to our circumstances. Now, that's a fancy way of basically saying how we perceive life's ups and downs and how we relate to them. And of course, for so many of us being in education, we're familiar with this whole concept of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Oh, well, I'm not going to try to get better at math because I'm just not good at math. That's very fixed, as opposed to a growth mindset is, well, I'm struggling with this particular part of math right now, but I'm going to put the effort in and I'm going to, try to get better at it. So it's a little bit of that. And it's also, instead of growth versus fixed, it's somewhat also what I'm talking about with locus of control, it's external versus internal. So by that I mean perceiving that the locus of control is external is the type of person who perceives, not necessarily all the time, but perhaps some of the time, that things happen to you and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, of course, life is, challenging. That's a big part of what we're doing here as a way to be able to kind of ride the waves of the challenges of life and to do so in a way that's relatively skillful. But when we have the capacity to do it skillfully, we are choosing to take more control of that locus of control and to perceive it as being internal. So while a terrible thing might happen, you can deal with it because you're aware of the fact that how you relate to it, how you perceive it, how you respond to it will really have an impact on how profoundly impactful it will be. So what I mean by that is, let's say, you have a challenge at work that is really problematic. People who, for whatever reason, are experiencing it or relating to it by perceiving it as this external locus of control are just like, oh, there's my principal who XYZ, can't catch a break kind of thing. Whereas an internal locus of control, or your ability to take ownership of how you relate to it, can be more along the lines of, well, I know that, this is what the circumstances are, but I'm going to make the choice to not allow myself to get down about it. Or, I'm going to really try to see this with much more rational perspective, which harkens back to that whole thing about watching what's going on the stage and putting yourself up in the balcony. You have a little bit more space, a little bit more perspective. That's the same idea, that we're using that as a way to understand that we have control about how we relate to something, respond to something, even if we don't control the external circumstance itself. So I think you get it. I don't want to beat it to death, but this idea of being self-aware allows us, when we slide into this kind of, can't catch a break, poor me, I'm the victim of circumstance kind of thing, that we can interrupt that and be more proactive, take ownership of the fact that we are in charge of how we relate to things, even things that are, really difficult. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be the case, but at least when it is possible to have some agency over how we deal with these challenges and whatever might be going on, it can really have a very positive impact on riding the waves of those things in life. So, you know what the next thing is. We're going to get into our 10-minute meditation. And I think I'm just going to interject kind of intermittently, but not really talk you through the anchors and the things. Sometimes I feel like it's nice to get a break from that. So let's begin. Just allowing yourself to settle in. If you're still processing some of what I was saying, understanding that you could always replay that intro again if you really want to hear it one more time. And it might come up during your practice, something inspired by that, or of course, any thoughts might come up. You're going to notice, and then you're just going to shift your attention back to being present and allowing yourself to rest your attention on whatever anchor you choose. So let's just allow ourselves to settle in, and I'll pop in a few minutes just to see how you're doing. Noticing where the mind is now. And if it has wandered off into thought, planning, imagining, worrying, remembering, whatever it might be, we're going to pivot eventually back to our anchor, but before you do, I find that it's helpful to label these different thoughts. You can just say to yourself, thinking, or you can even be more specific using some of those terms that I just listed a moment ago. What I like about this is it allows you to acknowledge the thought, acknowledge where your mind is finding itself drawn to. Because we're not really, it's a subtle difference, but we're not pushing thoughts away or trying to kind of cover our eyes and plug our ears. Instead, you really want to see it, like see the thought, understand the thought, and then you're just shifting your attention away from it. Like, okay, I'll see you when I'm done. I'm sure it'll be there for you. But for right now, you are exercising your ability to choose not to follow your thoughts. So you're going to choose not to follow it. You're going to come back and allow yourself just to rest in the present moment. And even though it does require some effort to hold your attention here, to keep bringing it back over and over again, there is a restful quality to it because you're giving yourself a break from following your thoughts, which we do all day long. It's quite unusual, and it can be quite restful. So we have about 3.5 minutes left. Let's go ahead and sit in silence together until that final bell, continuing to do this same noticing, labeling, and then coming back to this resting in the present moment. 10 minutes. And that's all I have to say about that. So, as always, thank you so much for taking this time for yourself, and thank you for allowing me to accompany you on this journey. And I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.